Blake Lively's case isn't building. It's wobbling worse than 8-inch heels on a brick sidewalk. Imagine someone quotes you to the whole internet, swears there's a recording, and when you say, "Great, press play," they clutch the file and whisper, "Not right now." That's exactly how these filings read. A line from a private conversation gets waved around like proof, the actual audio is kept under seal, and the person on that tape is telling the judge to release it. You tell me who looks confident there. Blake filed a confidential declaration and pointed to an audio exhibit with minutes and seconds. That is how you cite a tape. In the same motion, her team asks the court to keep the declaration and the recording sealed. Wayfarer's reply is boring in the best way. Protect the witness's name, protect the project title, but unseal the substance because the judge will rely on it and the recorded party wants his own words public. That last part matters. If the recorded defendant, Steve Sarowitz, wanted privacy, different discussion. He's asking to release his own words. You don't protect someone by quoting him for impact and then hiding his voice. You protect a version of a story. Ground rule, so we're clear. I'm reading filings and I'm not declaring crimes just in case any lawyer is listening. Recording laws vary by state, and the papers don't say where this happened. The court decides that. Our question is smaller. If a quote from a tape is strong enough to sell a claim, why can't the public hear the full cut? Walk the sequence with me. A witness allegedly records a conversation with a defendant. Blake's filing quotes that recording with timestamps. Her side asks to seal the declaration and the audio. Wayfarer says keep the witness identity and the project name private, but the rest should go public because judges don't decide big issues in the dark. In this circuit, documents tied to major rulings start with a strong presumption of public access. Courts still seal things, but for narrow reasons: safety, true privacy risks, trade secrets, privilege. This might be embarrassing, or this will trend is not the standard. Wayfarer labels her sealing request overbroad. That word has teeth. It tells a judge the request hides more than is necessary. The fix is the classic one: redact names and direct identifiers, release the meat. That protects a private person and still lets the public see what the court will weigh. Common sense test. If the audio destroyed the recorded party, he'd be begging to keep it sealed. He's asking for the opposite. He wants it out. That doesn't prove who's right, but it does tell you how each side reads the risk of context. What actually changes minds when tapes drop is always the same trio: timing, words, aftermath. Timing tells you what kind of conversation this was: before accusations, in the middle of a flare-up, after a filing. Timing hints at motive and strategy. Next, the exact language. Not adjectives, not a caption, the actual words. What was asked, what was answered. Was there escalation, apology, bait? Finally, aftermath. Who followed up within a day? What actions matched the label being sold, and what actions contradicted it? A bad moment is human. A pattern is something else. Aftermath draws that line. There's another question everybody hears and avoids. Why was a witness recording a private conversation with a defendant? People hit record for 3 reasons: fear, coaching, leverage. The answer usually leaks through when you hear everything instead of curated slivers. Fear has a sound. Coaching has a rhythm. Leverage lands on a headline like it caught a ride. Strip the names and keep only the behavior. You can't build a case on a quote and lock the source in a drawer. If the recording helps you, roll it. If you won't roll it, stop quoting it like scripture. Pick a lane. Optics matter because reputations live there. Those quoted lines generated headlines. Of course they did. But quoting a sealed exhibit while arguing that releasing it would be harmful to someone whose identity can be protected and whose voice is asking to be heard is not a good look. Judges in this district repeat the same principle. Reputational harm and negative coverage don't overcome the presumption of access. If a story is strong, context helps it. If a story needs blackout paint to stand, that says plenty on its own. Let's handle the judge without theatrics. I'm not alleging bias. I'm describing the room from where I sit. From the outside, it has sometimes looked like one side gets a longer runway until the record forces a pivot. That creates an appearance problem. The same judge also reversed himself recently on a privilege issue when better arguments and facts hit the docket. That shows he will move when the law and the record require it. A narrow, transparent order here is realistic and easy to defend. Protect the identity, release the substance, explain why. If we get something broader that keeps context sealed after it's already been quoted for effect, the appearance problem gets louder, not quieter. You don't need a gavel to spot the tells. If an order mentions an in-camera review, the judge is listening first and deciding what goes public after. If there's a deadline for redactions limited to names and direct identifiers, substance is likely coming out. If you see public version of Exhibit 1, start warming up your headphones. If the recording truly contains serious abuse, releasing it with the name redacted ends the fight and strengthens the claim. Everyone hears it. If the recording doesn't land the way the quote implies once it's played in full, keeping the context sealed while quoting the tape is a short-term media strategy, not a long-term legal one. It can win a news cycle. It doesn't win a courtroom. There's a downstream benefit to getting this right. Once a judge signals that overbroad sealing won't fly, filings improve. Parties stop painting black rectangles over context and focus on guarding identities and actual private data. The audience gets a fuller picture instead of a collage with captions. Speculation shrinks. If your goal is accuracy, that's healthy even when the truth is messy. Here's a pocket checklist for any "there's a tape" storyline, including this one. Who asked for the meeting? Who pressed record? Who set the topic? What exact phrase is being used to support the claim? What happened in the next 24 hours? If you can't answer those, you've got a trailer and a headline, not the movie. Back to the detail that actually matters. The filing notes she publicly cited time markers, minutes and seconds. Looks small, it isn't. If a tape is strong enough to cite for effect, it's strong enough to hear for context. If the strongest evidence only works in the dark, maybe it's not the strongest evidence. Also, what about the witness? Protecting a private person is a valid interest. That's why you remove names, emails, phone numbers, and any detail that could put someone at risk. None of that requires covering the timing of a meeting, the gist of a discussion, or what happened after a conversation one side already quoted to the public. Protect the person, don't erase the story. Still torn? Try the neighbor test. Your neighbor reads a line they say you said, files it in a dispute, then keeps the audio sealed while asking for extra damages. Do you nod and pay? Or do you ask the decision maker to press play so everyone hears the full exchange? We both know the answer. I've seen the line that unsealing fuels social media chaos. It will. Welcome to the internet. That's not the legal test. If virality controlled sealing, every celebrity case would be hidden forever. Courts fix that with narrow orders, names out. Substance in, more work for clerks, more clarity for everyone else. One more layer people ignore, we attach to whatever version we hear first. Quotes hit. Screenshots spread. By the time context arrives, the crowd has chosen a jersey. That's why sunlight matters. Context won't please everyone. It slows the spin. If a claim is accurate, context makes it undeniable. If a claim is shaky, context forces a correction. Either outcome beats weeks of outrage glued together by ellipses. So where does this land? If the judge is thinking about public trust and appeal proof, the order will be narrow and boring. Identity protected, substance released, short explanation. If the order stays broad and keeps context sealed after it was already used for impact, the process will look worse to normal people, not better. No one respects a rule that seems to move depending on the name on the filing. If the audio goes public, we line up the quotes against the transcript with timestamps. We read the actual words and check timing and aftermath. If the audio stays sealed, we walk through the court's reasoning and what that means for every motion that follows, because this fight sets the tone. Let's be honest about why this is hot. A quote is easy to tweet. A tape is harder to spin. If a recording is strong enough to be your proof, let people hear it. If you won't let people hear it, stop using it like a trophy. You don't get both. So here's the standard I'm holding. If you want the public to treat a recording as proof, let the public hear the recording. Protect the identity that needs protecting. Release the substance the court will consider. That's fair to witnesses. That's fair to defendants. That's fair to everyone trying to follow this without being managed by black bars. Turn on alerts if you want the breakdown the moment an order mentions a public version of the exhibit. I'll bring the filing, the transcript, and the timestamps. You bring your brain and a snack you won't spill on the keyboard. We'll deal in evidence, not echo, and if the tape drops, we listen. If it doesn't, we remember who quoted the clip and who fought for the context.